The silence in Canyon Village was heavier than the 4 days of snow that had accumulated since Elias left Sparewood. He brought the heavy snowplow Wesley had gifted him to a halt, the engine's low thrum the only heartbeat in the abandoned settlement. He peered through the frosted windshield, noting that the heavy snow had not been disturbed. He had beaten Sawyer to the prize, but the victory felt hollow in the biting chill of the mountain air. Stepping out into the waist-deep drifts, Elias didn't head for the buildings. He moved with the practiced efficiency of a man returning to a familiar nightmare. He stepped to the back of the plow, arming himself heavily with the weapons Wesley had helped him pack. He suspected Sawyer wasn't far behind. He had already positioned cameras along the road to monitor any approach, their small lenses hidden in the frozen bark of dead pines. Once he reached the center of the settlement, he planted 2 more cameras, his fingers stiff despite the gloves. He had to work fast. He trekked toward a specific hillside area, searching for a ghost. He found it, an old marker from years past, nearly swallowed by the thick layers of snow. Elias swung his shovel, clearing away snow and layers of frozen dirt until his blade struck metal. With a grunt of effort, he forced the hatch open and stared down into a dark void. This was the secret Wesley had whispered to him in Sparewood. Elias climbed down a ladder that seemed to descend into the very core of the earth, running down hundreds of feet until his boots hit a concrete floor. At the base was a short, dark hallway that led to a control room. As he stepped inside, motion detectors lit the room up, revealing the staggering gravity of the installation. Row after row of cold, gray machinery hummed with a dormant power. Elias didn't stop to marvel. He walked straight to the primary terminal and pressed the spacebar. 8 screens flickered to life, each displaying a massive cylindrical object, missiles, with a different number on each. A secondary display showed a yellow status, indicating they lacked sufficient power. "Come on," Elias whispered to the empty room. By activating the terminal, he had triggered a charging sequence. In a matter of hours, the missiles would have the power they needed to change the world again. He pulled a handwritten piece of paper from the inside of his coat, Wesley's instructions, and began to type. His gloves came off quickly, his scarred fingers dancing across the keys as he worked to dismantle the installation before Sawyer could arrive. He watched the monitors intently until each status bar changed to green, indicating the weapons were disarmed. He was about to finalize the sabotage when his handheld device let out a sharp, rhythmic chirp. He checked the screen. Sawyer's plow was visible on the perimeter cameras, several men huddled in the back. "You're early, Eric," Elias muttered. He had less than an hour. He ran across the silo to the primary communication system. Sawyer's plan, to reprogram the missiles to detonate along the San Andreas fault line, forcing survivors to flee east into the bottleneck of Canyon Village, where he would be waiting as their sole provider and god. Elias's fingers flew over the keyboard. He couldn't just turn them off. Sawyer might have someone who could turn them back on. Instead, he reprogrammed the system to launch but added a devastating override. He maintained the lock on the silo hatches. If the sequence triggered, the missiles would ignite, but with the doors welded shut by his commands, they would incinerate everything inside the silos without exploding on the surface. He set the countdown on his mobile device and bolted down a secondary hallway toward a different silo exit. He was halfway up the ladder of the distant silo when he heard the heavy thud of the main hatch opening far behind him. Sawyer and 2 of his men were heading down into the control room. High above, Elias reached the top of his exit silo. He braced his shoulders against the hatch, pushing with every ounce of strength until it popped loose. He scrambled out into the snow just as his mobile device hit 0. Deep underground, the silence of the control room was shattered by a mechanical voice announcing the final seconds. Sawyer realized too late what Elias had done. As the launch sequence began, the mayor's face twisted in a mask of pure, impotent rage. He screamed out Elias's name just as the engines ignited. On the surface, the ground began to heave and shake. Elias took cover as flames shot through the closed silo hatches, the intense heat instantly melting the steel doors and welding them shut. The silos had become a fiery grave for Sawyer and his inner circle. The remaining militia guards along the perimeter, seeing the earth vent fire and realizing their leader was gone, didn't stay to fight. They rushed back to their plow and fled toward New Cody. Elias stood in the cooling embers of the hillside, the silence returning to Canyon Village. The threat was neutralized. The missiles, intended as a short-range deterrent against Canada or Mexico, would never be used to shatter the fault lines of the West. He walked back to his plow, his movements slow and weary. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time, staring at the charred ground. It was a small consolation for the role he had played in the country's end years earlier. He looked at the road ahead. He could have gone back to Sparewood, back to the warmth of the diner and the family Ella was trying to build. Instead, he started the engine and turned the plow toward the east. He chose a different path. He went home. The drive took 4 hours. To his surprise, when the weathered farmhouse came into view, it was still intact, untouched by the militia or the roaming scavengers. He did a careful security sweep of every room, his boots echoing on the floorboards where he had once killed Sawyer's scouts. Finally, he made his way down to his underground bunker. It was exactly as he had left it, a silent tomb of the old world. But as he reached the desk, he saw one thing that was out of place, a half-eaten box of sweet bread. He touched the cardboard, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips as he remembered Beth's chatter and her childlike soldier's salute. He powered up the computers and sent a signal to Wesley, letting his old friend know the job was done. As he checked the perimeter cameras one last time, a movement in the stable caught his eye. He rushed out of the bunker, through the dark hallway, and into the cold air of the barn. Standing in the center of the stall, his coat shaggy and his breath plumming in the air, was his trusted horse. The animal nuzzled his hand, having managed to find his way home across miles of frozen wasteland. Elias leaned his head against the horse's neck, the war finally over, even if only for today.